You know, there's this one word that's supposed to save the planet, but what if it's actually doing the exact opposite? That word is sustainable. And if you've been paying attention, you know it is absolutely everywhere.
I mean, think about it. It's right there on the tag of your t-shirt. It's basically giving you permission to buy more, totally guilt-free. But is that reassurance really earned? Should we feel so good about it?
And it's not just your clothes. You see it all over your food, right? It promises that your weekly grocery run is this grand act of environmental heroism. And hey, that's a really comforting thought, isn't it? But we've got to look a little closer at what's really being sustained here.
And get this, it's even taken over the world of finance. I mean, you can build an entire investment portfolio around this one word. It has become the ultimate feel-good word of our time. But what if that good feeling is just, well, built on a lie?
So have you ever really stopped to ask what it actually means? Like, when some giant corporation slaps that word on their product, what are they really truly promising? Because, the more you look into it, the more the whole thing starts to feel like this beautifully constructed illusion.
And that right there brings us to the core idea of our source material for this explainer. The vagueness of the word sustainable, it's not a bug, it's a feature. It's a word that seems to be expertly designed to hide what's really going on.
Yeah, this quote from an environmental policy scholar really just nails the whole problem. Sustainability has become a buzzword that can mean everything and therefore means nothing. Wow. I mean, when a word can mean whatever you want it to mean, it doesn't mean anything at all, right? It just becomes a marketing tool, not a real commitment to change.
Okay, so how is this illusion actually built? How does it work? Well, our source breaks it down into 5 key dimensions. Think of them as 5 clever tricks that allow companies to look green while they just keep on doing business as usual. Let's pull back the curtain and see how it's done.
All right, so here they are. First, we're going to look at how the definition itself is kept fuzzy on purpose. Then we'll dive into how metrics get cherry-picked to create this illusion of progress. Third, we've got the whole technology will save us angle. Fourth is my favorite, the temporal shell game, pushing promises so far into the future they don't even matter. And finally, we'll see how the real damage just gets shipped out of sight. Okay, so first up, definitional vagueness. This really gets to the heart of it. When a company says it's sustainable, you have to ask, what are they actually sustaining? Are they talking about sustaining their business model, their brand reputation, their shareholder returns? Or are they talking about sustaining actual ecosystems and a stable climate? Because the word is so vague, they can be doing the first one while making all of us think they're doing the second.
All right, next up is the trick of measuring only what's convenient. This chart is a perfect example of what's called the intensity trick. So look at the bar on the left. It shows that emissions per product are going down. And you think, wow, that's fantastic, they're getting more efficient. But then, look at the bar on the right. Their total emissions are still going up. How is that even possible? Well, it's simple. They're just making and selling way more stuff. It's a classic shell game just with data.
And that leads us right into the third trick, techno-optimism. You know this one. It's that super seductive idea that some new invention is just going to swoop in and save us so we don't really have to change our behavior. But here's the catch. Technology often has this hidden dark side, and it's summed up perfectly by a concept called the rebound effect. Basically, technology makes something more efficient, which makes it cheaper or easier to use. So we just end up consuming even more of it. Any environmental benefits? Poof! Go.
Let's make this real. Cars get more fuel efficient, right? So what happens? People just feel fine driving longer distances. We invent energy-saving light bulbs, and suddenly we're lighting up the entire backyard like it's a stadium. And here's the big one, electric vehicles. They're sold to us as this pure, unmitigated win for the planet. But are they really? That whole story conveniently leaves out the massive emissions from manufacturing the batteries, from mining all the lithium, and, oh yeah, the fact that the electrical grid charging the car is often still powered by burning fossil fuels.
Okay, dimension 4 is what our source calls the temporal shell game. Basically just kicking the can down the road. And this timeline, wow, it's an almost perfect and kind of cynical illustration of how it works. So step 1, you announce a huge net zero by 2050 goal. You get amazing press for it today. Then for the next, 20 years, you just keep doing business as usual. And then when the deadline starts getting uncomfortably close, you just quietly revise the goal, or hey, announce a new, even more distant target. It is an absolutely brilliant strategy for never actually having to do anything.
And that brings us to the final and maybe most insidious trick, externalizing harm. This slide shows you the two sides of the exact same coin. So here, in wealthy countries, we see the shiny green storefronts, the device recycling programs, the organic cotton. It all looks great. But the hidden costs of all that are pushed elsewhere. They're pushed onto polluted rivers in other countries, onto toxic e-waste dumps, and onto the backs of people facing exploitative labor conditions. It's only sustainable for us because the unsustainability is happening somewhere else.
Okay, so now we've seen the 5 big tricks: definitional vagueness, convenient metrics, techno-optimism, kicking the can down the road, and externalizing harm. But why do they work so well? What's the ultimate point of using this kind of vague language? Well, it all comes down to a really powerful rhetorical strategy. Our source argues that this language serves 3 main functions, and they're not just about marketing, they're political. First, there's legitimation. It makes destructive practices sound totally responsible. Second, delay. It postpones meaningful regulations. I mean, just think about all the decades of voluntary pledges that have let industries put off real climate action. And third, displacement. It shifts the real costs onto the most vulnerable people and onto future generations. The key takeaway here is that this isn't just sloppy language. It's a tool with a purpose.
All right, so we spent a lot of time deconstructing the illusion. It can feel a little bleak. So what's the alternative? What does the other side of this coin look like? If we're going to move past all this corporate greenwashing, what does real, meaningful sustainability actually demand from us?
Well, the truth is, real sustainability is, well, it's demanding. It's not about just being a tiny bit more efficient. It's about an absolute reduction in the stuff we use, period. It means we have to start questioning the sacred cow of infinite economic growth on a planet with finite resources. It demands rapid, urgent transition, we're talking years, not decades, that's enforced by binding regulations, not these flimsy, voluntary pledges. And maybe most importantly, it has to be a just transition that puts equity at the very center, always asking who's bearing the costs and who's reaping the benefit.
So, now that we know the tricks of the trade, and we have a picture of what the real deal looks like, how do we fight back? Because this isn't just some academic exercise, right? This is about creating a practical toolkit so you can see right through the greenwash. And that's the real power of this analysis. It gives all of us the ability to start asking much better, sharper questions. And when we do that, we can finally start demanding real action instead of just accepting these comforting but ultimately empty words.
So here you go. Here's your toolkit for resistance. From now on, when you see that word sustainable, don't just nod and accept it. Demand specificity. Ask, sustainable for whom, by what measure, and for how long. Reject the greenwashing when you see them using those selective metrics. Start to question the whole idea of infinite growth. Support real, binding regulations over those weak voluntary promises. And always, always ask, who is paying the price for this so-called solution?
This quote by Robert Swan just brings it all home, doesn't it? The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. And really, just relying on these vague corporate promises. That's a form of believing someone else will handle it. This analysis is a call to reject that passive stance and become active, critical participants in this conversation.
And so, that leaves us with this one final thought. We've pulled back the curtain, and we've seen how a single word, sustainable, can be twisted to legitimize destruction, to delay action, and to displace harm. But the good news is, we now have the tools to see right through that illusion. So the real question for all of us is, what will it take for us to demand more than just a word?